Well, welcome back to The Real Story. And with me now is Harold Vilimsky. You have heard him on my radio show before. I was fortunate to meet him at the Heartland Institute. Want to give them a shout out for making that meeting happen. And Harold is the head of the Austrian Freedom Party's delegation to the European Parliament. And he has been a member of the EU Parliament since July of 2014. His party secured the first national parliamentary election from his party's perspective in post-World War II Austria. They did that at the end of September, and they finished ahead of the governing Conservatives after tapping into, honestly, anxiety that I think is prolific now around Europe, and that's anxieties about immigration, inflation, Ukraine, and other issues. He received the Officer's Cross of the Hungarian Order of Merit. That's one of their highest awards, actually. And he just also recently received the Order of the Serbian Flag. It's the second highest state order in Serbia. It's awarded mainly for development of international relations between the Republic of Serbia and other countries. So I tell you all that because Harold isn't just popular in his own country. He is popular with other countries as they fight for their own national sovereignty, which is really what this is all about. And the reason I wanted Harold on is because he flew over from Austria to attend CPAC this weekend in Washington, D.C. So, Harold, thank you so much for being on my program.
First of all, thanks a lot for having me. It's a big honor for me to be back on your program. Thanks a lot.
So why was it important for you to come to CPAC, a conservative gathering? And is there anything similar to this type of gathering in the European Union?
A little bit, yeah. But it's important for me to tell to you that I have been attending the CPAC meetings and conferences in Washington, D.C. for many, many years. And I remember when I was first time here in Washington, D.C. at the CPAC meeting, it was in the year 2015, yeah, where also Donald J. Trump was one of the speakers. He was scheduled as one of the speakers, yeah. And there were a lot of people from the GOP who were not in favor of Trump, but nevertheless, 1 year later, in 2016, Trump was elected as president of the United States, and those who were against him joined him. And now when Trump was re-elected in the year 2024, some of them became members of his governing team. And what I do in supporting Trump, just two things that really impress me. And the first thing is that he is someone who is acting against globalization. I remember his slogan last year at the CPAC meeting is, where globalism goes to die. And the second thing I really support is that he is the only player on global stage who is in favor of a ceasefire and peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, which is very, very helpful for us Austrians. And there is also a tie between the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and the US President Donald J. Trump, and it is helpful. And we show that we want to be friends, not only of the United States, but friends of the Trump administration. And that gives power to us as alliance of patriotic parties in Europe.
Okay, so you brought up Ukraine, and I'm glad that you did. I did want to ask you about that. Most recently, though, there's been quite a stir here in the United States because Trump called Zelensky a dictator. And do you see him that way? Does the EU see him that way? And what do you think is the solution with the Russian-Ukrainian war?
It's a little bit difficult for me because I have not the information the U.S. president has in this situation. But nevertheless, Zelensky is for me something like a puppet. He is not a statesman, and he was a former comedian and then became a president, and he never, ever was willing to negotiate about peace and a ceasefire. He always demanded money and weapons, and that was the reason why we were against him and why we supported Trump, because Trump was the only global player to be in favor of a ceasefire and peace negotiation. And now Trump is ready to deliver and to take care for peace negotiation. And we, as an alliance of patriotic parties in Europe, really appreciate that.
And so, I mean, you sit sort of on one ideological spectrum in the EU. Do you feel that your position on letting Trump solve this Ukrainian-Russian war, do you feel that that is actually the majority position held by the EU?
Definitely not. There is a high majority against it, and they want to keep the war going on. And maybe there is some also big business behind the curtain. We don't know about that. Yeah? But what I never, ever understood when I took the floor in the European House of Parliament, and I was demanding for a ceasefire, I was demanding to stop the killing. Yeah? We now have around 600 or 700 thousands of deaths in this war, and they were heavily acting against me. I'm a puppet of Putin, and I'm doing the job of Putin. And I was asking them if they are crazy. And some weeks later, I was glad because also the Holy Pope shared not my position. Obviously, I'm a very minor player, but he demanded peace, negotiation, and a ceasefire. And then it became more popular to be in favor of a ceasefire and peace negotiations. But nevertheless, in the European House of Parliament, the Liberals, also the Greens, the Social Democrats, and the Conservatives are really willing to keep this war running, and we try to argue against it, and are very hopeful that the United States now are really heavily pressuring Zelensky to stop what he's doing and to take care for negotiations and stop the killing in this region.
So we're going to get to the Vance speech in a minute, his Munich speech on security, European security. And surely NATO is at the heart of that security. And it's been that way for, 80 years now, essentially. So on that topic, though, because of the fraying opinions about how the Russian-Ukrainian war should be ended, it has brought into question in big public debate about the status of NATO. I mean, what do you see happening with NATO in the future?
You know that Austria is a country which has the principle of neutrality in its constitution. And we as party also are very strong for being neutral in the world, like the Switzerland still is or maybe was. But nevertheless, it's a major part of our Austrian mindset to stay neutral. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not really capable of commenting on that, what will happen with NATO and as a neutral country, it should be decided by those who develop the NATO for the future to comment on that and to decide whether it should be financed better or not. But we as Austrians are really, we stick to our major principle of being neutral and don't want to become part of alliances like NATO is. Nevertheless, I value that what NATO has done, but nevertheless, I ask for understanding that Austria and my party is demanding to stay neutral as much as possible.
Okay, wow, that's a great response. Okay, let's turn now to the Vance speech because it was about more than just external security. And Vance said in his speech, we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security. And normally we mean threats to our external security. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia. It's not China. It's not any other external actor. What I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values shared with the United States of America. And he goes on then to basically talk about free speech and, honestly, the actual protection of democracy noting that the Romanians had just simply canceled an election recently. And then he goes into detail about speech issues in Great Britain and elsewhere. And so, what is your reaction to the Vance speech, or does it not matter at all given Austria's neutrality stance, or was this a monumental speech for Europe?
Absolutely. It's a game-changing speech. And Vance also took the floor yesterday in Washington at the CPEC meeting. It was something similar, and I really appreciated that, what he said. Yeah? And he seems to be a very authentic politician, and that what he said is essential for us as Alliance of Patriotic Parties, because to take care for free speech is an essential thing. And we are facing a situation where more and more free speech is under pressure. And if the new re-elected or elected U.S. administration is telling to the European responsible politicians, you have to take care that free speech must be one of the highest principles of democracy, and do not attack them is something I really appreciated enormously. And I also was very happy that not only J.D. Vance, but also Elon Musk were supporting AfD. And AfD is a party like mine in Austria, which is heavily attacked by the others. But what they demand is very similar to that, what the GOP is demanding and what the Trump administration is demanding. And so I really appreciate that conservative, center-right, freedom parties in Europe are now linked to the United States, to the GOP, to the Trump administration, that something really good is developing with this.
Well, that's great. I mean, it is interesting to watch what is happening in Europe, because it feels like the establishment is trying to maintain control of its people in ways not seen before. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. So free speech is under pressure in Europe. You've had random terrorist attacks by Muslim immigrants in Europe, and you have financial pressures now mounting and cultural pressures mounting as the immigrant population has grown to substantial numbers. And so you look at this all and you just wonder, the center-right governments that are now popping up, specifically in Germany, are they going to be able to change things in their own country, or are the establishment going to win out? The Green parties, your fake conservative parties over there?
Okay, I'm absolutely convinced that they will be capable of changing things, and we can smell something like the wind of change that is coming from the United States to Europe, but parties like you mentioned, the AfD or mine or others, that they will not be able to change things from one day to the other. It takes time to change things fundamentally and to take care for free speech, for democracy, for freedom, for better relations between Europe and the United States and things like that. We need time, and it is very helpful that the United States new administration is openly supporting parties like ours. And maybe just a few comments on that, what happened in Austria. We had elections in September last year, and we came in first. And we were not given a mandate to form a coalition in Austria, but the others were given this possibility. Conservatives, not really conservatives, rhinos, Republicans in name only, Social Democrats and Liberals, but they failed after having negotiated 3 months. Then we were given the mandate to form a government in Austria, and we negotiated with the Austrian rhino conservatives. And after a couple of weeks, we realized they were not really interested in finding common grounds with us, and that were more or less fake negotiations. And so the mandate to form a coalition and a government in Austria was given back to the conservatives. And today they were successful to form a very slight majority to govern Austria. Maybe something similar might happen in Germany, but nevertheless, I guess there will be snap elections in around 6 months or 12 months. It's a very unstable coalition in Austria, and maybe also that what will be set up in Germany. And so I guess within the next 2 years, our alliance will grow significantly, and with that, we will be capable, with friends in the United States, to take care for really changing things. More democracy, peace, sharing our values, fighting against the silly wokeness, all stuff you are discussing on your radio station. We are discussing here at the CPAC meeting. We are discussing in the European House of Parliament. There's so much common ground, and I think we really will be successful, not tomorrow in Europe, not the day after tomorrow, but within the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, that's great news. We're so happy that you're putting up the fight in the European Union, and we're happy that Trump got elected so he can fight with you. He is a game changer, not just in the United States, but certainly on the world stage, and that makes a difference in real people's lives. So thanks so much, Harold Vilimsky, head of the Austrian Freedom Party and a European Parliament member since July of 2014. I want to thank you so much for joining me on The Real Story.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure for me. Thanks a lot.
And we'll be right back with The Real Story and much more to cover, including